Thank you for joining us today for our wonderful conversation that I'm so looking forward to with Trevor Maxwell. My name is Martha Raymond, and Trevor and I are going to have a fireside chat, literally, on the importance of advocacy and how to get started if you or someone you know would like to become an advocate and to learn kind of the grassroots basic skills needed and the passion and the commitment that goes along with that. So at this time, I'm so pleased to welcome Trevor Maxwell in. He's the founder of Man Up to Cancer. And Trevor, I'll turn it over to you just to share a little bit of your journey and how you started Man Up to Cancer.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just let me say thank you so much for having me and for talking and for just being part of this event means so much to me. You know, the colorectal cancer community has become my tribe, my people over the past 4 years. So yeah, I'm 45. I live in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, beautiful place on the coast. And first and foremost, I'm a husband and dad. So my wife, Sarah, has been my primary caregiver through all this. She is my top hero, and my girls, of course. So our girls are 16 and 14. So we have Sage, who's a junior in high school, and Elsie's a freshman. And so yeah, so I was diagnosed with what we thought at the time was stage 3 colon cancer in March of 2018, but learned pretty quickly thereafter that it had metastasized to my liver. So basically I've been living with stage 4 colon cancer for 4 years. And just the Cliff's Notes on my treatment. So I also have Lynch syndrome. I found out after I was diagnosed with cancer, and that's for people who don't know what Lynch syndrome is. Basically, it's a genetic variant or mutation where my DNA doesn't really correct itself all the time. So it predisposes people to cancer, sometimes at an early age. So yeah, so I've pretty much been in treatment, active treatment as a patient for most of these 4 years. I've had 4 major abdominal surgeries, a bunch of chemotherapy, a bunch of immunotherapy. I just had my last major surgery in Boston in September of 2021. And I just got basically my first clear scan last month. So yeah, so it's been, I think for the first time I can really say that I'm NED, no evidence of disease. Right now, I'm just super grateful and celebrating, feeling good. I'm recovered from chemo last year and from my surgery, feeling really good. I've been out on hikes with my family and friends and exercising and just eating good food and enjoying life. So that's a little background on myself personally, my family, and a little bit about my cancer journey. And I'll just give you just a quick primer on Man Up to Cancer, and then you can ask away. But so Man Up to Cancer is an online community that inspires men to connect and avoid isolation during our cancer journeys. And that's it. It's a simple but powerful mission, because I learned through my journey and through reading a lot about how people respond to a life-threatening illness. I learned about the problem of men isolating while going through cancer and the consequences, which are pretty serious, which we can get into later. But so I wanted to do something about it. So I started it a couple of years ago, pretty much right around the new year of 2020. And Man Up to Cancer is a podcast, website, social media channels, and we have an insanely engaged Facebook group called The Howling Place, where we have about 1,500 men who are cancer patients, survivors, caregivers. Any man impacted by any type of cancer can be a part of our group. And so, yeah, that's been just amazing to watch grow and see that happen. And then also I'm excited for this year because my right-hand man, Joe Bullock from down in North Carolina, and I are starting a chemo backpack program for the guys in Man Up to Cancer, where we're going to be shipping out, we're going to start small, between 5 and 10 backpacks a month, but we're going to send out backpacks with comfort items, and also just some inspirational stuff to men in our community who are going through chemotherapy. So that's really kind of our first program where we start to like actually provide some direct help, which is great as well. So yeah, that's a little bit of background on Man Up to Cancer, and we can get into sort of the origin if you want.
Absolutely. Boy, Trevor, that's incredible, and a little bit of a fangirl moment here, if I can. I've just been following your journey, and I'm sure like many of our listeners today, through your podcasts, and just so many inspirational guests and individuals that, we might never have met had you not, brought them to the forefront. And I think one of the things, having been in program development in the colon and gastrointestinal cancer space for so long, is that what really is so inspirational to me is that you saw that unmet need. You saw that men were struggling, and like so many men, don't want to seek, support, or don't want to even talk about things. And
no, come on, is that true?
Well, it might be for some guys. It might be.
It's true.
But I think that's just incredible, and the difference you've made and will continue to make for these guys, I think is just, and women too, and their wives and their loved ones, because it's all about the whole family, as you know.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because it is a family thing. It's a community thing, because this is Man Up to Cancer is not just about helping men who are struggling, as they go through the journey. When we provide that support, we help their partners, spouses, kids, community, so it really has a ripple effect. So thank you for appreciating that.
Absolutely. Because we always, and it's so true that it's the patient, unfortunately, that has the diagnosis, but it is the whole family, the community, the friends, everybody's in this together. Definitely.
Yep.
So Trevor, can you speak a little bit, for those that are listening that would like to get involved, that maybe have an idea like you did and said, geez, this is something that needs to be addressed. Can you give any kind of best practices or lessons learned along the way of like, oh, this worked, but maybe this didn't?
Sure.
Any kind of little tidbits?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like one day you're just cancering away as a patient and you just wake up and you're like, okay, now I'm ready to be a patient advocate. Like generally it's a process. And really this gets into how Man Up to Cancer came to be, because I struggled with anxiety, depression, really crippling mental health challenges. When I found out I was metastatic, when I had my first liver surgery, then my second, and it just seemed like, oh my gosh, like I was convinced that I was going to die and leave my kids behind, and all that dark stuff, and the walls just closed in on me, and I found myself very isolated and going through some really tough mental health stuff. So that was, to me, like there was a period of my life when I wasn't even making a phone call. I couldn't even talk to anyone. So the idea of like having this conversation a couple of years ago was so far off. So it took me to like hit that bottom place and then start to dig out, where I started to even think about contributing my voice or finding a way to like participate in advocacy. So really what happened was, I reached a point in my life where, thank goodness, my wife and my kids were like, I was at the point where I was like, I just want to go in the woods and disappear. And I don't want to burden my family anymore. I feel like I'm just a burden and a failure, and I have this cancer and it's awful, and I just wanted to disappear. And my family was like, nope, you are sticking around. We are going to love you through this. And yeah, it's emotional to even think about it, because I was lucky to have that family support that wouldn't let me isolate. They were like, you're struggling right now. We understand that. There's reasons for you to be struggling. You're facing this tough battle. But you know what? We're here for you, and we're going to help you get out of this. And so we had to go through that process. And finally, I was like, got to that point where I was like, I need help. And I think for many guys, that's like that first barrier that you have to get to, is to say, like, I can't do this on my own. And you shouldn't have to do it on your own. So that was the whole, where I started to really get this idea of like, I know that there's a lot of guys out there struggling with this idea, trying to just man up and be tough and go through this without help and without a community. So as I started to get help, I went out to so the Dempsey Center here in Maine has a tremendous program where I could get counseling, group counseling, individual counseling. I started participating in online networks and reaching out to people through like Colon Town, Fight CRC, CCA, CCC, all these great groups we have in the colorectal cancer space. And that's when I really had the shock of seeing how few men were participating in that space, like who were connecting, reaching out for support. Like everywhere I went, it seemed to be there was at least 3 women for 1 male. And it was a glaring gender gap. And that was sort of like where I really started to see like, okay, this is a problem. How can we start solving it? So then to your point around becoming an advocate, so I started to regain my mental health because I got help. And I reached out and I, through counseling, exercise, nutrition, all that stuff, and I started feeling better. So even though I kept having setbacks with my disease and like surgeries and chemo and all that stuff, my mental health was started to get right. And I started to get in the mindset that I needed to be in for everything. And that's when I was like, okay, maybe I can start getting involved in advocacy. So I guess the next step is how do you do this, right? Who do you contact? Because especially in the colon cancer world, there's many groups that do similar things. Some do different things and they do like some focus on legislative work and some focus on just the social support and different things. So the first thing really to do is just go to these places, websites. Like if someone mentions to you, hey, check out this advocacy group and what they do. Let's say Fight CRC, for example. Go on to their page. All of these organizations have trained staff or people or volunteers that their job is to welcome in new advocates and patients that want to start getting involved and having their voice be part of these conversations. So that takes some of the pressure off too. Like there's people who are going to hold you through this process. So I guess, knowing that you're enough to begin with and then starting to explore these different options, like, for all cancers, of course, there's American Cancer Society and ACS Can, fightcancer.org. Like that's another good place to start learning about different ways to volunteer or become an advocate. So yeah, I vividly remember Googling how to become a patient advocate, like on my computer, like when I first started to feel better mentally, and had no idea. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have any idea. But then I just started reaching out. Like when I did that, I found like different people like who were inspiring in the cancer space, and I'd like connect with them on social media or whatever, just reach out and start making contacts. So for me, that's kind of how I got started. And I remember the first week I got diagnosed, being that new patient that if I didn't talk to someone who had gone through colon cancer and had survived, like I needed to talk to that person like on the phone. So I reached out to some of my family members. I'm like, I need to talk to someone. And I'm sorry, like I'm chemo brain, but I'm forgetting his name because I didn't write it down for this talk. But a friend of a friend called me and spent like an hour on the phone with me, and I'm just like a hot mess. And he just gave me such comfort. It was like, you have this immediate bond from going through that same experience. And it just gave me such comfort that when I got off the phone, I told Sarah, my wife, I said, I just want to get to a place in my life where I can be that person on the phone with somebody else. And that continues to this day, because like when I started Man Up to Cancer, I was thinking like, yeah, I want to reach as many men as I can who need the help. But to me, it's the quality of those relationships. Like you said, it's that, like if I can impact one person's life and hear that from them, like, wow, you really helped me through my day today. That's what it's all about. And that's what gives me my, fire to keep going.
And I agree 100%. And it's that personal motivation that I think for all of us, when the days get tough, and they do, because we lose friends and we don't want people to suffer that we know and we've created these important relationships with. But I think it's that personal motivation when the days do get tough to be able to say, I am just going to keep one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to help as many people, knowing they will in turn help others. It's not always easy. And I always say that to people wanting to get into advocacy, that there's nothing more fulfilling, I think, but it can be challenging. And I think we have to acknowledge that.
You're absolutely right. We become friends with these guys, and we love them and their families. And then we know that a lot of them are not going to make it. So yeah, we know that a lot of them are going to pass away at some point. And I wasn't ready for that early on in my cancer journey. Like, and I always tell the guys, like, if this is destabilizing, if it's not good for your mental health, if you're not ready to sort of come face to face with that mortality of a friend, and then also through that experience of yourself, then take a break, step aside, and maybe you'll come back in and be around it when you're ready, because it is a lot and it's hard and it's heartbreaking. I think for me, I've been able to, I think I've just been able to find a way to experience that grief. And I mourn all my friends who I lose, of course, but I hold fast to the larger mission. And that is to be there as a family and as a brotherhood, and to walk each other home when it's time for us to pass. And I would want that for, I'm going to want that for myself. And it's an honor to be able to provide that for other men going through this. And then I also just, I think about my buddies, and I think about, when I get up in the morning, I think about Jared or Wes or, some guys that I've been close to. And I'm like, all right, what would they want from me for my day today? And then I'm like, all right, let's go.
And I think too, and I've followed, as I know you have, and you've been such a great support to so many of our younger, especially young men lately that have been diagnosed, and teenagers. And it's heartbreaking to see and get to know some of these young men. And I know that Man Up to Cancer has been so important to them, and being part of the Wolfpack, because that gave them that sense of, I am one of the guys. And so I applaud you for your work with these young gentlemen and their families, because it's devastating.
It is. And like you said, like sort of how I view our group is to give them that place where everyone gets it, where they can share the good, the bad, the ugly, and know that they're in a safe place where it's going to be unconditional love and support, and to know that they have this community that's always going to have their back no matter what.
And you absolutely do. And I think also on a global level, which, the Global Colon Cancer Association, just with the platform they have, reaching the millions, individuals worldwide affected by colorectal cancer. You think of it, and something to Man Up to Cancer. I know you're United States based, but also in Canada. Am I correct?
Well, yeah. So we have we're all in every state of the US and across Canada. And we also have people from, I think, 7 or 8 other countries who are involved in the community and listen to the podcast. Still small numbers, in those other places, but we do have a global community, which is fantastic. And and shout out to the GCCA for the incredible impact and work that it's having out there.
And I bet after today, Trevor, you're going to have a lot more global guys and, families, reaching out, because it is something where, no matter where you live, if you're in India or United States or Finland, we're all in this together with, what we go through being impacted by this disease. But I'm so glad that we've chatted about, the wonderful benefits of being an advocate and getting started, but also looking at it from, the challenges and the importance of, if as an advocate, you need to take that break for your own mental health. I mean, I've been in the advocacy space 30 something years, and there have been many times when I said, Martha, you have to step back, because it becomes, you can't get past that. So I would encourage new advocates and advocates of, all stages to recognize that for themselves as well.
100%. I mean, advocacy, being an advocate, either as a patient in active treatment or in your survivorship, is that's a lot to take on. It's super important. You can make an incredible impact, and you should. But like you said, you absolutely have to look at it as a marathon, not a sprint. And you have to put your own health first. Make sure your oxygen mask is securely fastened before you try to help others, right? So I'm I need the people around me to give me my check, like, hey, Trevor, you've been pushing too hard, too long, take a break. It's essential. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So for those advocates out there, you could work 24/7, 365 and still be filling that hole, right? Still be trying to help others. So do what you can where you are and what is comfortable for you and what makes sense for you. And also kind of finding your lane too. I didn't know where my lane was going to play out, like as an advocate. At first I was doing, more colon cancer stuff, and I still do that. But then I started really getting into the guy problem. And so then I just that became my lane and something that I felt a real calling for. And I think as you explore different ways to become an advocate, you're gonna get those messages and those feelings that tell you when you're on the right track. I firmly believe that the universe was like, it almost feels like I didn't really choose to do this work. It was like the universe gave me no choice. It was like, you are doing this. Like, you get up and all of a sudden you're having all these ideas that you're not even like trying to think of. You're like, oh, I should do this. And you're throwing stuff on the wall, and then all of a sudden things are sticking. And, when I started Man Up to Cancer, I was thinking, it would be this like little community, and, maybe I'd help a couple people. And then other people come out like Joe and others with the Wolfpack. And then the idea starts rolling downhill and gathering momentum. And now we have these Wolfpack leaders. So I have Man Up to Cancer has 18 men across the US and Canada who, volunteered to be Wolfpack leaders. And in that role, they connect with their local and regional cancer centers. And so they hand out postcards about Man Up to Cancer and go make those connections to try to support men going through cancer in their regions. And they have really taken up that challenge and are super fired up about it, because they've seen the benefits of being part of the community. And now they want to pass that forward to others. So yeah, and I remember another vivid memory that I had before cancer was I constantly listened to this. I like to listen to motivational talks. And on one of the motivational talks, this guy kept talking about, if you see a problem or an injustice or something in the world that you just know should be confronted, or needs help with, or needs to be fixed, you always think that somebody else is going to fix that problem. And then he says, but they're not. You will. And so anyone hearing that message out there who thinks like, there's this big problem that I see in cancer care, or this gap, or something where I want to be a part of, but there's other people working on it, I'll just leave it to them. Like, no, you can do it. And it takes a lot of facing uncertainty and like inadequacy, and like, because I've had to deal with like feeling like, well, who am I to be a leader or to speak about this stuff, or to feel like I'm an inspiration when I'm just a regular cancer patient survivor like everybody else. But I just kept coming back to that in my head, like, what? You just got to go with it. And sometimes when you get cancer, your ideas or limitations about what you can do and what you can accomplish, sometimes those go away, because you're just like, what? My life may be short. I'm shocked that I'm still here at 45 when I was diagnosed at 41. So there's that urgency to, I'm like at different points along the way, I was like, I think I'm just going to forget this Man Up to Cancer stuff. But I just was like, nope, I'm going to just keep pushing. And now to see what it's developing into and all the lives that are touched, going through cancer as a man is not a solo thing. You need whether it's Man Up to Cancer or other communities, your colon cancer people, like you need to find a community or communities that can give you that support and comfort along the way. And also, by the way, give you tips and tools on how to manage your disease. Like a lot of the stuff that I learned about which doctors to go to, which hospitals to go to, which treatments might be right for me, came through Colon Town and other colon cancer groups. And Man Up to Cancer is not a treatment group because we're all cancers, but we do start conversations. I know there's conversations that start in Man Up to Cancer that lead to people, getting second opinions, getting third opinions, doing those things to give you the better chance at surviving your disease.
So important. Absolutely. And, Trevor, as you were speaking, one of my favorite quotes, and exactly what you were saying is, be the change you wish to see in the world. And it's so true, because we all have something to contribute. And at first we may think, oh, someone else is doing it, or this is a small effort. There are no small efforts. If you're helping someone else, nothing is too small as far as, and totally. I think we could ask any patient who's been through, whether it's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, whatever it might be, there's no act that's too small when you show kindness to somebody else. So I agree. I just think we all have to, especially in this day and age, I think when so many of us have felt isolated with the pandemic, that any act of kindness makes a huge difference. You may never know that, but to someone else, it could totally change how they're feeling.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I was just thinking about COVID too, because we started, just before COVID hit, and the issue was men and isolation and cancer. And then COVID has taken it and, made that problem tenfold. There are, isolation is a huge problem in our culture right now for everybody, regardless of cancer diagnosis. But for those facing a life-threatening illness, especially those with, who have maybe their immune system is compromised, or they're going through different treatments where they need to protect themselves. Like it's so having these online communities, and also this right here, right? Being able to, I know it sucks to not be able to gather in person, and that like we all want to do that, and that's starting to happen for people for whom it's safe to do that, and I'm all for it. Like I'm trying to do an in-person gathering at some point soon, but we do have this, and we have Zoom calls with our group, and people can come on and just
right.
just talk it out and all stuff like that. So yeah, it's important.
To find a way, I think if anything, the pandemic has taught all of us, find a way to get it done, find a way to, it doesn't take the place of in-person hugs or being together, but at least, like you said, we can see each other and we can get our feelings across. And
yep.
So Trevor, one thing I wanted to ask, kind of in closing, because and a shout out to your podcast. And I think it was your 50th episode that I watched the other night. And I mentioned that earlier, but could you chat just for, a second? And I don't want to get you all fired up.
Oh boy.
Maybe I do. Because I think it really, it goes right to the conversation we've been having that, as patients, we can help other patients because we've been there, we've walked that walk. We're not just talking the talk, we know. And absolutely. I think when, people mean well, they come from a place of wanting to show that they're, rooting for patients and things like that. But in your podcast, it was that positive toxicity. And I love that because I think it resonated with me. It resonated with so many people. I read so many of the comments. And I think with our audience today, I would encourage everyone to check out your podcast. And before we end, I'd like you to let everyone know how to do that. Yeah. But could you just chat for a couple minutes on why you chose that subject? And again, so important. And like I said, resonates with everybody I've spoken to about it.
Yeah, thank you. So toxic positivity is like probably my top pet peeve of having cancer. And that is when cancer patients are expected to just be rah, positive, running 10Ks, like volunteering and doing it all with like this smile on their face and just being positive all the time. Like there's this expectation that that's what the cancer experience should look like, which is part of why I was so anxious and depressed early on, because I was like, well, crap, I don't look like that. I'm on my couch or on my kid's floor, like weeping, and I'm a mess. So it was really important for finally someone to tell me, being like, going through what you went through with mental health, that's normal. Like that happens for so many people who go through cancer. Like it's not supposed to look like sunshine and rainbows all the time. But unfortunately, so when I call them cancer muggles, so cancer muggles are people that have never had cancer or really experienced it firsthand. A lot of times cancer muggles are super well-meaning, and I get that. And they'll come up to you and find out you have cancer, and they'll say, hey, hang in there. You're so strong. You're so brave. You got this, stuff like that. And that's fine. Like I have no problem with the language people use either. Like you can call me whatever. I don't care. But if someone is just insisting or like giving you advice as like a cancer muggle, when they come up to you and they're like, they find out you have cancer and they're like, well, whether they give you nutrition advice or where to go for certain therapies, or they're just like this. Well, the mindset is everything. If you just stay positive, you're going to beat this. and it's like, well, I try not to get triggered, but that's a big trigger for me. It's like, where else on earth would we have the expectation of anyone to just be positive all the time? Anyone, regardless of cancer. But then for someone going through cancer to be told that is basically like saying, well, you're in charge of whether you live or die based on your mood So you better not have those dark thoughts come in. And it's not only rude and just out of place, that piece of it, that going that far to tell someone that, but it's also damaging, because in my mind, if as a cancer patient, if you're denying your own experience of going through grief and sadness and fear and all of the human emotions that come with this cancer journey, these God-given emotions, if you're denying those and suppressing them because you feel like, oh, I don't want to be manifesting my cancer, that to me is more harmful and dangerous. That's like the real danger, is to not express all those things, to not feel them. Like, so I will give some advice to folks on that, is embrace all of your emotions, whatever you're going through. You know, even if you're at that total bottom where I was, sometimes that's just where you are. And sometimes that's where you need to be. Like, I wouldn't be doing this today if I didn't get to that point. So it hurts. It sucks. Those dark feelings, that fear, all the negative stuff that comes with it. It's really hard, but don't feel the shame of it. There's no, that's the culture around you. You don't need to feel ashamed of anything you're feeling, and you should embrace those feelings, feel them, and then visit with them, and then let them pass through so that you can experience the other ones. I just feel like we're put in such a box where we're just expected to, we're basically shamed into people explaining to us that we can think away our cancer. And if that's the way people approach their cancer, where they think you can cure yourself with a total positive mindset, that's great. I'm not judging that. Everyone has their own mindset when it comes to cancer. I just feel like when people who haven't experienced it tell you how to beat it with the power of positive thinking, that's insensitive and damaging. And so I wanted to, with the podcast, it really was just going over that topic and how I want people to never feel ashamed about what they're going through with their emotions.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And I think we could all, absolutely. We could all relate to that. And if it was only so simple as being positive, wouldn't we all do it? And
right. And it's insulting. It's like, so I know there's a lot of my friends who have been super positive people and absolutely have a tremendous mindset, and they died from cancer. Does that mean that they fought less effectively or didn't think the right things versus someone who lived? Of course not. That's not accurate. Sometimes cancer kills people. Sometimes it doesn't. There's a million factors involved with that. And of course, actually, this is tricky for me because I do believe in the power of positivity.
So Trevor, I think everything you just said, it resonates so with me personally, and I am sure with our cancer community. And because I think it is insulting, and I know people mean well and everything, but if it was just as simple as all of us being positive, then no one would have cancer. And I mean, wouldn't that be the best thing ever? So I certainly understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and again, I honor anyone, however anyone chooses to cope with it and to create whatever framework you need for going through cancer. I honor that. For me, knowing so many friends who have been so, courageous and positive and have died from cancer, and others who have the worst mindset in the world, they're the most negative people and they live till 90, right? So there's more going on, right? It's just more complex. And I think the bottom line is, however you approach your cancer and your mindset, that is what works for you. And I think people need to think about that whole aspect of shaming. Cancer patients shouldn't feel shame about whether their disease progresses, gets cured, right?
Absolutely. I mean, again, because if it was a heart patient that needed open heart surgery, we wouldn't say to them, just be positive and you won't need that surgery. I mean, it's really ridiculous when you think about it, but yet in the cancer community, no matter what type of cancer, you do hear that so often. And again, I know people mean well and they probably don't know what to say.
And I get that, like the well-meaning thing, but it's like, I wouldn't go up to, like you said, I wouldn't go to a spinal cord patient and be like, you know what? If you could just get your mind in the right place, those fibers are going to come back together. Like, we're dealing with a physical disease, and yes, the mind plays a role. So it's a tricky subject, but I think there's a difference between well-meaning, you got this, which is great, and here, let me give you some advice on, how to beat your cancer with XYZ. I think that's where it gets hard for us patients to hear, because man, we're busting our asses with all the things, whether surgeries, treatments, holistic things. We're working on our mind all the time. We're working on all these things. And then just to hear someone try to simplify it, or, it really reduces the experience to something that it's not. It's very complex and it's very individual. So thank you for letting me talk about it.
Absolutely. And I would encourage everybody to not only check out that podcast episode, but so many of the others. They're just great and
thank you.
Really wonderful to listen to. So I guess in closing, although Trevor, I could chat all day with you.
I could talk with you all day too. Absolutely.
I appreciate your time so much. I did want to mention one quick thing before I give you the last words.
Yeah.
When we were chatting earlier about the importance of being able to take a break if you're an advocate, to understand, that self-care, how important. I did want to give a mention to research done by Dr. Laura Porter, who's, a wonderful friend to all of us in the colorectal cancer community. She's done some great research on that as an advocate, to understand that and to take that pause when you need it and let people know, I'm okay. I just need to take a beat and I'll be back. And, I just think that's really important. So I would encourage people to, check out Dr. Porter's research. And so, Trevor, I will give you the final kind of words if we missed anything, or, definitely let us know how we can be in touch with you and Man Up to Cancer and support your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you so much again. I think the best thing, I guess I'll just talk real quick directly to anyone out there who's struggling. Like, if you're a man who's struggling, particularly with the emotional aspects of cancer, and maybe you haven't even shared about it, or you're wondering where to put that. If you're a guy who's struggling with the impact of cancer, our doors are always open. There's a community in Man Up to Cancer that's going to embrace you and help you through. And so, yeah, check us out. And also, if you're a caregiver, if you have a man in your life, we hear this a lot, where I'll get a lot of emails or PMs from spouses or kids or relatives of a guy who are like, my uncle or my husband is really struggling with his cancer diagnosis, and he's not talking to anyone, and he's shut himself in his man cave. And, would you talk to him? I'm like, hell yeah, of course. Like, so if you know someone who's going through that, refer them to our community. And you don't have to, so there's different ways to get involved with Man Up to Cancer. You could just listen to some podcasts, and then, maybe it would help you to just listen to some guys talking about our cancer journeys. Or you could check out our social media website, or you could join the group on Facebook. The best way to learn about us and do all these things is just go to our website, which is manuptocancer.com. And there's links to the podcast, to the group, to, social. So manuptocancer.com is basically our hub. And then you can also just search Man Up to Cancer. We're on Facebook, Instagram. And if anyone wants to reach out to me personally, it's Trevor, Trevor, at manuptocancer.com.
Well, Trevor, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation, our little fireside chat here, and so happy and appreciate your time and continued good health and all best wishes. And I know all of us will be reaching out to Man Up to Cancer and supporting your great efforts. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It's really an honor, a pleasure to speak with you. It's a great talk. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks again, Trevor. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.